Hello everybody. Today we'll be dealing with the history of English literature. I'll be providing a very brief synopsis of the history of English literature, which will help you understand literature better, which will help you from the exam point of view, from the net point of view, and so on. So this video will be the first part of it, wherein I'll be dealing with the Old English period to the age of Milton. Okay, so the slide contains Old English period to the age of Milton, the ages, each of the ages that comes in between, the major writers of each age, works of these major writers, the movements of each of these ages, social and political milieu of these ages. So let's proceed to the slide. Okay. So we are beginning with the Old English literature or the Anglo-Saxon literature from 600 to 1066. As literature students, you might be knowing 1066 is the time of Norman conquest. The major writers of this age are CYNEWULF, CAEDMON, etc. Beowulf is one of the major works of this age. Okay, Beowulf is the story of a warrior fighting a devil named Grendel. Major works of CYNEWULF are Juliana, Christ, Eileen, Apostles of Christ, etc. And the major works of CAEDMON is hymns. The Middle English literature from 1066 to 1500. During this age, the most famous writer is none other than Geoffrey Chaucer. Chaucer's age is from 1340 to 1400. From 1400 to 1515, there is no major work that happened in literature, and so this period is known as the Barren Age in literature. Then talking about Chaucer, Chaucer has come up with very famous works like Canterbury Tales. Canterbury Tales is as you all know, is the story of a group of pilgrims who traveled together from London to Canterbury to visit the shrine of St. Thomas Becket at Canterbury Cathedral, and they decided to give a prize for the best storyteller. This was decided by Harry Bailey, the host, and the meal will be given once they return from their journey. So that was Canterbury Tales. Each of the pilgrims was supposed to tell 4 tales, that is 2 on the journey to the cathedral and 2 stories on the journey back from cathedral. Okay, then another work by the author is the Book of Duchess. Book of Duchess is also known as the Death of Blanche. This poem was written to commemorate the death of Blanche of Lancaster, that is the wife of John of Gaunt. Another famous work by Chaucer is Troilus and Crusade. Troilus and Crusade is set against the backdrop of a war during the siege of Troy. It was composed in rhyme royal. Another famous work by Chaucer is The Legend of Good Woman. The Legend of Good Woman, this prologue describes how Chaucer is reprimanded by the god of love and his queen Alceste for his works like Troilus and Crusade, because they say in Troilus and Crusade women are depicted in a poor light, and so in order to compensate for that, this particular work, that is The Legend of Good Women, was written. Then another work by so that's about Chaucer. Another famous writer of the age was William Langland. Famous work by William Langland is Piers Plowman. Then we have to mention about the miracle plays, mystery plays, and morality plays that was in use during this age. That is, miracle plays depicted the life of saints, wherein mystery plays depicted the scenes from Old Testament or the life of Christ, and morality plays included allegorical representation of life, love, death, repentance, etc. The age is also famous for interludes, and Heywood is very famous for his interlude 4 Ps. 4 Ps are Palmer, Peddler, Pardner and Pothicary. So we dealt with Old English, that is from 600 to 1066, then Middle English from 1066 to 1500, wherein we saw the age of Chaucer, that is from 1340 to 1400. From 1400 to 1515 we said it to be the age of barrenness. Okay, now we are moving on to the next age in English literature, that is the Elizabethan Age. Elizabethan Age is from 1558 to 1603. The very name Elizabethan Age brings to your mind the very famous author Shakespeare, right? During this period, we have to mention about the contributions of Wyatt and Surrey. Wyatt is the one who introduced sonnets into English, and he introduced the Petrarchan sonnets into English, and Surrey is the one who introduced blank verse in English literature, and blank verse was later used by Marlowe, Shakespeare, Milton, etc. Marlowe's Mighty Line, blank verse is said to be Marlowe's Mighty Line by Ben Jonson. Ben Jonson was the person who used this phrase. Then comes Tottle's Miscellany. Tottle's Miscellany is a compilation of songs and sonnets by Wyatt and Surrey. 96 songs were written by Wyatt, 40 by Surrey and 135 by other writers. So it is just a compilation of the songs and sonnets of these many writers. Then Bacon, another famous figure is Bacon. Bacon's essays are very famous. They were published in 3 series. That is, first series in 1597, then in 1612, first edition in 1597, second in 1612, and the third in 1625. Bacon's essays are famous for their aphoristic style. Bacon is said to be the father of essays. And as you all know, Bacon's essays are of studies, of love, of anger, of travel, and many other essays were written by Francis Bacon. Okay, then Bacon had also written works like Advancement of Learning, New Atlantis, and his essays included those like of friendship, of revenge, of marriage and single life, etc. Okay, now what happened in 1609? 1609 is a very famous year because 154 sonnets of Shakespeare was written during this period, and it was addressed to William Herbert, the Earl of Pembroke, and Dark Lady. It is written just W.H. And it is assumed to be William Herbert. Another famous writer of the age, Edmund Spencer. Edmund Spencer is known as poet's poet, and one of the famous work of the writer is Amority. Amority is 88 Petrarchan love sonnets by Edmund Spencer. Another work is Shepherd's Calendar. Shepherd's Calendar, as the name itself suggests, it's a pastoral poem. Pastoral poem in 12 books. One book for each month. Okay. Then another famous work by the author is Epithalamion. Epithalamion is a work wherein he celebrates his marriage with Elizabeth Boyle. Another famous work by Spencer is Prothalamion. Prothalamion is one wherein the marriage of the daughters of Earl of Worcester is celebrated. Another work by Spencer is Fairy Queen. Fairy Queen is an allegorical poem. After Spencer, we should remember the name of Philip Sidney. Philip Sidney is famous for works like Arcadia, Apology for Poetry, which he wrote as a reply to Stephen Gosson, and Astrophel and Stella are other important works by the author. Then comes the university wits, the people or the writers who were educated in either Oxford or Cambridge University. The major writers are Christopher Marlowe, Lillie, Nash, Kidd, Peele, etc. Christopher Marlowe is famous for very famous works like Jew of Malta, Dr. Faustus, Edward III, etc. Lyle is famous for his work Euphues, which led to the term Euphuism. Then comes Nash. Kid is famous for Spanish tragedy, Peel, etc., where the other writers of the gang of university wits. Then we are going to discuss about John Donne. John Donne is one of the famous metaphysical writers of the age. And metaphysical writers are noted for their far-fetched imagery, conceits, their paradoxical comparisons, images, etc. The famous works of John Donne are The Flea and Valediction Forbidding Morning, etc. Another famous figure of the age is Ben Jonson. Ben Jonson's essays were compiled in Timber or Discoveries. The very famous works by the author are Volpone, Epicene, Every Man in His Humour, Every Man Out of His Humour, etc. Then the first comedy that happened in literature, that is Ralph Roister Doister by Nicholas Udall. Gamma-Gurton's Needle is also a comedy that happened during this time. The first tragedy in English literature is Gobuduc by Norton and Sackville. Now comes Shakespeare, the very famous Elizabethan dramatist. So, in order to remember Shakespeare's works or dramas easily, you can divide them into early comedies. Early comedies include Love's Labour's Lost, Two Gentlemen of Verona, and Comedy of Errors. Then comes history plays Henry IV, Henry V, and Richard II. Mature comedies of Shakespeare, Twelfth Night, Much Ado About Nothing, Merchant of Venice. Roman plays by Shakespeare, that is Julius Caesar and Antony and Cleopatra. Great tragedies of Shakespeare, how do you remember it? HOLM. Hamlet, Othello, Lear and Macbeth. Somber plays of Shakespeare, All's Well That Ends Well, Measure for Measure, Troilus and Crusade. Then comes the last plays of Shakespeare, Tempest, Cymbeline, Winter's Tale. So that is how you remember the plays of Shakespeare, like early comedies, history plays, mature comedies. Then comes plays like Julius Caesar and Antony and Cleopatra, that is Roman plays. Then the great tragedies which you remember like HOLM, Hamlet, Othello, Lear and Macbeth. Then comes somber plays like Much Ado, Measure for Measure, All's Well That Ends Well and all. Much Ado About Nothing is one of the mature comedies of Shakespeare, right? Last plays of Shakespeare include Tempest, Winter's Tale, Cymbeline, etc. Now comes the Jacobian Age. Jacobian Age is said to be from 1603 to 1625. It is the reign of James VI of Scotland, who inherited the crown of England as James I in 1603. James' first Bible happened in 1611, wherein he appointed a team of people to come up with the New Testament of the Bible. Then major writers of this age are John Webster. Webster is famous for his work White Devil and Duchess of Malfi, which you might have studied for your post-graduation. Then the very famous essayist Francis Bacon. As we already mentioned, aphoristic essays of Francis Bacon, essays like Of Friendship, of Love, of Travel, of Anger, of Revenge, of Marriage and Single Life, of Friendship, New Atlantis, Advancement of Learning, works like that, Francis Bacon. Then essays were published in 3 editions, 1597, 1612 and 1625. Okay, he is known as the father of essays, Francis Bacon. Then comes Ben Jonson. Ben Jonson's, we also mentioned about Ben Jonson earlier. Ben Jonson's works were Volpone, Epicene, Every Man in His Humour and Every Man Out of His Humour. Now comes the Caroline Age. Jacobean Age was from 1603 to 1625. Now Caroline Age from 1625 to 1649. Okay. This is known as the age of Charles I, So that is why it is synonymous with the Caroline Age. The rise of Puritanism we can see in Caroline Age. Now Puritanism, we always equalize Puritanism with the very famous author Milton. So you can remember it that way. Major writers of this age are the Cavalier poets, some of the metaphysical poets. We mentioned about John Donne earlier. Then there are some more. Then Milton is the most famous writer of Caroline Age. So metaphysical poets, will deal with them first. Metaphysical poets, as I already mentioned, is famous for their strange conceits, far-fetched imagery, paradoxical images which are unusual, etc. This term metaphysical was first used by Samuel Johnson. Most important metaphysical poets are John Donne, George Herbert, Henry Vaughan, Abraham Cowley, Richard Crashaw, Andrew Marvell, etc. Now comes the Cavalier poets. Cavalier poets, it's easier to remember the Cavalier poets because three of them are there. Herrick, Lovelace and Suckling. Herrick is famous for works like To Althea to Julia. Lovelace is famous for To Althea from prison and to Lucasta going to wars. Suckling is famous for the work Ballad upon a Wedding. Now we are going to mention about the very famous writer of the Puritan Age or the Caroline Age, that is John Milton. Okay, John Milton, famous for works like Aeropagitica, wherein he talked about the freedom of press. Then another very famous work by the author is Paradise Lost, which was published in 1667, wherein he talked about the first disobedience of man. Then he wrote about Paradise Regained. Then he wrote a masque called Comus. He wrote an elegy on the death of Edward King and it was named Lycidas. He also wrote works like On Shakespeare, On Arriving at the Age of 23, Samson, Agonistus, etc. So I'll give you a brief description of what I said today. That is, we discussed from the Old English period to the age of Milton. That is from 600 to 1649. First we mentioned from 600 to 1066. That is from Old English period till the Norman conquest time. And during this period, the famous work was Beowulf, and the famous writers were CYNEWULF and CAEDMON. Then we mentioned about the Middle English, that is from 1066 to 1500, wherein the major writer was Chaucer. Geoffrey Chaucer. From 1314 to 1400 was his age. Then from 1400 to 1550, nothing great happened in literature, age of barrenness. Chaucer's works were known as Canterbury Tales, Troilus and Crusade, then Legend of Good Woman, Book of Duchess. Then we mentioned about the Miracle Plays, Mystery Plays and Morality Plays. Miracle Plays mentioned about the life of saints. Mystery Plays mentioned about the scenes from Christ or Old Testament. Then morality plays, allegorical representations of love, greed, etc. Then we also mentioned about interludes. The man famous for interludes is Heywood. 4 Ps, we mentioned about his work 4 Ps, that is 4 Ps are Palmer, Partner, Apothecary and Peddler. Then we came to the Elizabethan Age. Elizabethan Age is from 1558 to 1603. The very famous writer of the age is Shakespeare, as you all know. Then we also discussed about other writers like Spencer, Sidney, etc. Spencer was known as poet's poet. Then Epithalamion, Prothalamion, Fairy Queen, Amority, 88 Petrarchan sonnets by the author, Shepherd's Calendar are all famous works of Spencer. Then we mentioned about Sidney. Sidney's famous works were Astrophel and Stella, Apology for Poetry, etc. 1609. 154 sonnets of Shakespeare was published in 1609. We mentioned about Wyatt and Surrey also during this period. Petrarchan sonnets was brought into English by Wyatt, and Surrey is famous for blank verse. Um then Tottle's Miscellany. Tottle's Miscellany is the collection of songs and sonnets of Wyatt and Surrey and by some other writers also. Then we mentioned about the university wits. University wits like Lilly, Green, Nash, Marlowe, Kidd, Peel, etc. Uh, then coming to the Elizabethan drama. Elizabethan drama, we mentioned Shakespeare's dramas like early comedies, history plays, mature comedies, Roman plays, great tragedies, somber plays, and last plays. Then we also mentioned about Ben Jonson, famous for works like Walpole, Epicene. His works were compiled, essays were compiled in Timber or Discoveries. Another famous writer of the Jacobian Age from 1603 to 1625, right? Our Webster is another famous writer of the age. White Devil, Duchess of Malfi, etc. are famous works by the author. Then the age of Milton, Caroline Age, 1625 to 1649. Milton is famous for works like Aeropagitica, where he wrote about the freedom of press. Then Paradise Lost, Paradise Regained, he wrote a masque named Comus, Il Allegro, Il Penseroso, so twin poems by the author. Elegy on the death of Edward King is Lycidas. So then we also mentioned about metaphysical poets and Cavalier poets, right? Metaphysical poets who were known for their far-fetched imagery, conceits and all, writers like John Dunn comes there. Then Cavalier poets, Herrick, Lovelace and Suckling. Lovelace's famous work are To Lucasta, Going to Wars, To Althea from Prison, Herrick, To Althea to Julia, Suckling, Ballad Upon a Wedding. Okay, so that was it. We'll soon meet up with the next ages, with the remaining ages. So stay tuned. Do watch, like and share the videos. Comment below if you would like me to teach on any new subject that you like. So that's it. That's all for the day. Thank you. Have a great day ahead.